I want to say that me and my son watched this movie together, and he laughed throughout it. 12-year-old middle school humor. He just loved the movie. I really liked it too because of the daddy daughter dynamic that something I'm somewhat going through with right now. My question is, in the very beginning of the movie, there's a scene with the son going through a phone book, which is something that I had to explain to my son what a phone book was. It's such a technology-focused show. Was there some other symbolism to that, similar to the way there was symbolism in the wooden animal that was shown throughout the story and kind of tied into the father-daughter dynamic?
I think with that, I mean, that just comes from real life. I was an obsessive child, and I was like, I did that, except I did it about Dreamcast games. I would call Electronics Boutique and be like, hey, do you want to hear my opinions about Skies of Arcadia? I think it's a groundbreaking RPG. And they're like, kid, we don't have time for this right now. Like, I gotta sell Game Boys to moms, or whatever. And so unfortunately, there's no symbolism. It's just the tragic reality of my lonely childhood.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I loved the Katie vision in the film. So I was just kind of wondering what the inspiration was that and how that all came together, how much of a challenge that might have been to kind of add those 2D aspects to the animation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was, I definitely, it was something that we wanted to do from the beginning, but we didn't know if it made sense. And sort of, it was cool because Chris Miller and Phil Lord, who are producers for the movie, they are sort of they're producers. So it's producers are kind of like prison guards to keep the artists in check, and they were sort of crooked prison guards. They're like, hey man, just do it. The boss isn't looking, go, so they were always encouraging us to go crazier. But I think it just would have been a goofy idea if it didn't actually lock onto the character's personality, because we found that it really worked when it was able to give new insight to what Katie was going through emotionally. And I think if it didn't, it would have fallen out of the movie. It's just something that was wacky for no reason. But we found that it worked best when it was reflecting Katie's, or Abby's, thought process,
So tell me, Michael, I'm always curious about the creative process. Can you share with us kind of what triggered you to write this film? Was this a moment in time, an event? And you do have to tell us about this cute guy too.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I will tell you about this little gentleman. He's based on a real dog named Monchichi.
I thought so, yeah.
Who was my sister's dog growing up, and I loved dearly. Okay. And so a lot of the elements of the movie were personal, and it started with, my family and basically because my family is a little, I sort of am open about oh yeah, we're kind of, we're nuts, hey. And I always found that I connected with people when I was when I admitted that, and because they were like, my family's nuts. I did, everyone seems like they've got it together. And I feel like no one does. And and so we just wanted to have that in the movie. And just in terms of what sort of inspires, me or whatever, the whole movie is just working with people that we really love. It was awesome to work with Beck, who I've been watching on Saturday Night Live and skits. And he, every voice record for every line that's in the movie, there's 150 hilarious lines that he would just rattle off. And I would just be covering my mouth and throwing pens and stuff.
Yeah, and that's largely in part because of Mike. He's so fun to record with. He's he laughs a lot and he encourages it. It's I don't think there's ever a, you improvise and stuff and not everything's going to be funny, but I don't think he was ever okay, we're good. You know what I mean? He instilled a lot of confidence in me, and I'm sure I can speak for the other performers as well. So
well, he was easy because it was all great. And Beck is every robot in the
movie. Yeah. I was very excited to find that out as I watched.
So I have a question, Michael, really mostly for you. My kids, it's so funny. We were watching this movie, and at the end of a movie, we like to talk about, what did you think about it? What did you take away? What, not make it too serious or too heavy, but they're I don't want to say a little stressed about robots now, but they're kind of like, okay, the message is don't trust robots, you know?
Man.
But what are you hoping that people and families really take away from this film?
It's very corny. My answer for this is the most corny answer you can find, but it's true. The movie's very sincere. Like we're very sincere on the movie. But it's just that, you know, basically it's hard to be a member of a family because it's sort of like, you know, it's so easy to fight with your siblings or your parents or whatever, or like, oh, I'm not going to apologize, it's their fault, you know. And it's hard to be magnanimous and say, you know what, I'm sorry, Dad, or, you know, if your mom calls, to like take the time and answer the phone, you know. And it's like, to me, really, if we can heal the nation, then I'd be happy. No, but if we could, like, you know, bring families together, that would be sort of like my ultimate, you know, hope for the movie. And then with the side of, you know, it's like, it's sort of like, you know, it's all a joke, the robots, but there is a part of it where I'm like, hey kids, this is don't tell anyone, but they are coming. No, I don't really think they're coming, but I do think that even though technology is great and it's allowing us to talk, and I could talk to my parents during the pandemic, but there are also, you know, legitimate, you know, it's sucking our attention, and tech companies are not always have our best interests at heart. So I do think that those are sort of the main messages, I guess.
So my question, I'll say it to both Michael and Beck. So in the movie, we see Rick, who would really rather just live off the grid, you know, take all the electronics away. And then Katie, you know, who's always kind of viewing the world behind her screen. Where on the spectrum do you fall? Do you want to be totally off the grid, or do you need your phone in hand, constantly scrolling, constantly checking notifications?
For me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I grew up with my mom, like I went to her outdoorsy camp growing up, and like we'd go to Colorado, go on road trips from Chicago to Colorado every summer, and we'd go there in the winter too for skiing and camping and hiking and stuff. So I love that. But you know, there's so much creativity online, and like I came up through a sketch comedy group that got our start on YouTube at a time when, you know, that's kind of in the past now, but then people were like, what is this? And now I feel the same way about TikTok and Instagram, and it's a lot. So I don't know. I think I'm still looking for like balance in my life about like how to make it work for me, because it's a little overwhelming. So yeah, and I think the movie's really about is finding that balance. So I really relate to that. I'm definitely in the middle.
Yeah, and I'm sort of I actually have been doing this thing recently with my wife where at night we're like, well, let's like lock up our phones for 4 hours and talk. And we found that like within 8 minutes we were having like the deepest, most intimate connection we've had in years. Because it was like there's a lot of silence here. What's your childhood like? Jesus, you know. So, but it, you know, out of that like mild discomfort of like, whoa, what are we going to talk about? We were like, oh, it was crazy how much better the conversation was just not having our phones in the same room.
Hi guys, I love this.
Hi.
I loved it so much, especially the weird, you know, the embracing weirdness, because when someone calls me weird, I take it as a compliment. But
Yeah.
my question is for Michael. As I was watching this, you know, the character Aaron, I kept questioning, you know, he seemed, I thought maybe autistic or somewhere on the spectrum. And I wondered, you know, when you wrote it and, you know, approached your character, did you have that in mind in any way?
It was definitely nothing that I mean, it just observed from life, and that's what I was like as a kid. So maybe, you know, I don't know if I am, you know, but I do think that, you know, sort of like, I do think that one thing we were trying to do is sort of like reflect real people and real families, however we could, you know. So if someone takes that, great. It wasn't exactly what we were thinking when we did it, but we were also just like trying to like look at our lives and sort of, you know, sort of reflect that into the movie. So I don't know, but if you want to read it that way, great.
Just want to go back on the improv, because Beck, I knew you were the voice of the robots, but I didn't know if it was every robot. I had to wait till the credits. Like, okay, he was all the robots, because you gave it personality, like each robot had some kind of personality. And going on the improv, did you have a script, or did Mike allow you to have, to play with it? And Mike, how much did you allow your actors to have fun with their characters?
I mean, he was very supportive of it. He really encouraged it. I mean, obviously the script was there. We got all the lines that were written, and I mean, the script really works. And again, it's like a great script that creates great improvisation, I think, that like creates so many ideas. It's such a clear, the joke of these robots trying to understand humanity and having the lack of intelligence, being so intelligent in one way and so unintelligent in another, is such a clear comedy dynamic. So it was so fun to improvise in that. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, from his very first audition, he would just like, because we had like a couple sides, where it's like, oh, try saying this. Here's a couple lines that the robots might say. And it was so fun to see him just like run with it, where it's like after the end of the line, he did like 8 other lines, because it was like he was really picking up on, oh, this is what's funny about that character. And that's sort of how we structured the movie, where it was like, sure, we have lines, but like it was always like best idea wins. And Beck was often had the best idea, so we just put it in the movie, and it was great because it was like a one line that we didn't have to write. I was like, hey, there's a free joke. I love it. I didn't have to do anything.
Oh my God, yeah. It's the highest compliment.
My whole family absolutely loves this movie. We watched it a few times. It's so funny. But Mike, I want to know, so you wrote, directed, and you're a voice. I mean, was the plan always going to be that you were going to voice Aaron, or did that come about during casting?
No, it's actually something I'm like sort of ashamed of. I think that basically we had people come in, and we had hilarious 10 out of 10 actors and comedians and sort of all along the spectrum come in for that character, and some of them, all of them are like far more talented than I am. But there was some strange energy that was in because I sort of started out by doing the scratch voices, for basically before we get real actors to come in, it's like you just quickly say the lines just so you could see if the scene is working or not. So I would be most of the male characters just because I was always around, and just there was something about the energy of the Aaron lines that when it was someone else, even if that person was really great, it was like, this doesn't work as well for some reason. And so we just used me. So it didn't even feel like a job. It was like already there mostly. It was like, oh, just leave those lines in. But it's much better to have someone bring something new to it, because the things I'm bringing to it are already there. And that's why it's cool working with Beck or Abby or Maya or Danny McBride, or all these people were like lighting up the room with this like hilarious lines and adding their own perspective to it and stuff. Whereas, me, it was just like, I knew the perspective. There were no surprises. But it is the thing that worked the best, unfortunately, for the world.
My question, Mike, you, I know that the movie's based on your family, and it was like Aaron is kind of like you, and Linda is your mom. Mm-hmm. Who's Katie?
Katie's probably like a little bit of a combination of me also, as well as my sister. My sister is really funny and has a lot of like spark and energy. And I sort of like, it is a total delight to be around, but it's my side of things is just like going to art school and, my parents were like, art school, because it's like, it's a big risk, and like, spoiler alert, I'm not that good at drawing. But I know I have a lot of friends that are, so basically, so it was sort of a combination, in terms of that stuff.